can you explain why the conventional wisdom about ancient people are so at odds with your ideas about ancient people? Yeah, that's Harold Bohm. I can explain that. People like to think they're smart. And the easiest way to think you're smart in many ways is to think that other people aren't. And so we think, well, the people who came before us all these thousands of centuries, they just didn't know what we knew. Well, their cultures didn't have the same degree of staggering technological capacity that ours did, but that didn't mean that they were stupid. I mean, you throw the average person back into ancient Athens, they're not going to last very long. It's lack of respect. And, that is a definite hallmark of modern culture, is that you can hardly even tell, you can hardly even say, well, be respectful. It sounds like you're from 1890. Be respectful. Well, if you don't want to be nihilistic, you better be respectful, because being nihilistic and having respect for nothing are exactly the same thing. So you can start by having some respect for your ancestors and try to figure out what the hell they were talking about. You read the Old Testament, for example, it's a very weird book. It's a very, 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 very weird book. Lots of people wrote it. Lots of people edited it. It got sequenced together and turned into this volume for reasons that we just can't understand. It's a collective work of the human imagination. And people read it so simple, in such a simple-minded way. They read it like fundamentalists, like simple-minded fundamentalist Protestants think about science. The fundamentalist Protestants think the Bible is literally true, science is literally true, thus the Bible is science. Well, no. The people who wrote the Bible weren't scientists. That's just not how it works. But then the modern critics of religious thinking, of traditional religious thinking, they're the same. They do the same thing except backwards. They say, no, religion was science. It's just bad science. And so, we don't have to pay any attention to it. Well, it's not science. It's something else. It's ethics, it's morality, it's drama. It's all of that. And drama's about how to live. And religious drama it's a definitional issue. There's nothing deeper than religious drama. And the reason for that is that depth defines what's religious. And I know this firsthand, partly because in my clinical practice, I often see people who are in terrible, terrible, terrible trouble, and often that trouble is ethical. And if the trouble they're in is bad enough, there's no other language to conceptualize it in that isn't religious, because the religious language comes into its own when you're dealing with problems not only of life and death, but literally of heaven and hell. And, modern people think, well, there's no such thing as heaven and there's no such thing as hell. It's like, okay, fine. There's no such thing as heaven. Let's accept that. But if you think there's no such thing as hell, it's like, I can't see how someone who's educated would ever dare to make that claim. After everything that happened to us in the 20th century, I can't see that someone could ever say that there's no such thing as hell without being terrified that a bolt of lightning would obliterate them on the spot. Hell is real, and if you want to talk about it, use religious language. And if you want to figure out how to get away from hell, you use religious language. And that's what religious language is for. So, and that's actually understandable now. I would say if you want to learn about this, you can. You can read Nietzsche. You can read Dostoevsky. You can read Jung. It's hard. You can read Jung's student, Erich Neumann. Erich Neumann was a genius. A lot of this information is there waiting for people to begin to understand it. But it's hard slogging, and part of the problem is that you get to hell way before you get to heaven. And one of the things, Jung is sometimes conceptualized as a New Age thinker, and I think that's absurd. I think it's completely absurd. One of Jung's fundamental propositions is that if you follow a meaningful and truthful path, that will take you to the worst place you can imagine. And then possibly, having gone there, the journey uphill, towards the light can begin in earnest. Well, Who wants that? Well, no one, if they have any sense. But you know, Jung also made another statement which really cut me to the bone when I first understood it. He said, anything you don't thoroughly understand, you act out in the world as fate. And so one of the lessons I took away from that is that, you know, if you don't want hell to manifest itself in the world, then you better understand your role in producing it. And I would say that's actually the primary religious injunction. And I would also say that that's a big part of the reason why belief systems such as Christianity, I'm talking mostly about Christianity because that's what I'm most familiar with, but and also because it's definitely at the, you know, it's the foundation of Western civilization. I'm actually quite a fan of Western civilization. I mean, the fundamental moral injunction is in Christianity, or one of them, I mean, they're all tangled together, I guess to some degree, is like, you want to constrain hell within yourself. Well, that's no joke, man. I mean, you know, another thing I learned from Jung and from Nietzsche was that if you look at the sorts of things that happened, say in Nazi Germany or in the Soviet Union or in Mao's China, or that are still happening around the world, where there's systematic torture and persecution of millions and millions of people, where the entire state was devoted towards making things as bad as they could possibly be, and then making them even worse after that, is that people played a role in that, and they were people like you, and that means that people like you play a role in that. And so then the question is, what's your role, and is that the game that you want to be playing? Well, that's a serious question, because it is people like you who were responsible for that, and it means that to the degree that you're a person and you don't want that to happen anymore, you have to sort that out within yourself. So I can explain, and I think I'll close with this. Another deeply religious idea. There's another idea, this is an archetypal idea about the image of the Savior, the Messiah. The Messiah is the person who takes the sins of the world onto himself. That's a classic archetypal idea. It's like, what does that mean? It means that you look for the motivations that drove Hitler in yourself, because they're there. And that's what it means to take the sins of the world onto yourself. It means that you have to view yourself as the perpetrator of archetypal evil. You know, one of the things Jung said, for example, was that if you take a small moral failing that a person manifests and you dig into that as deeply as you can, you end up in the center of hell. Like the roots of that unethical behavior go all the way down to the archetype. And in my experience, that's been true. That's right. That's why people won't have conversations about this sort of thing. You see it happening in intimate relationships all the time, where there are things that the two people who are involved in the relationship will just not talk about. Why? It's because they don't want to go there. And where is it that they don't want to go? They don't want to get to the bottom of things. Well, no wonder, because, you know, that's an archetypal idea too. Hell is a pit. It's at the bottom of things. It's like, yeah, that is where it is. And you have to go there if you want to straighten things out. It's like, who the hell wants to do that? Well, the alternative is that it plays itself out in the world. And we've seen that. And that doesn't look like a good idea to me.